3 years ago, my adventure in video game reviews have started. But when I sat down to write this one, I couldn't remember a game that has confused me so much. On the one hand, there are so many glitches, but on the other hand, it is so fun that whenever I got home, I just wanted to play a little bit more. And I do not play it just for half an hour or so. I usually just sat there for much longer. Hypergun is a roguelike dungeon crawler first-person shooter. The concept is very interesting and in practice it works quite well. Although the story of this game is not the fundamental, it exists, and we can read about it on tablets or PCs left around the places, on counters or in the lobby of the game. Briefly, your objective is to play a simulation in which you randomly build a weapon to destroy an alien invasion. In theory, those who win the simulation will have created the ultimate weapon, capable of winning the war on behalf of mankind. Graphically, I was somewhat disappointed, because in the trailer the game seemed very similar to Superhot, but except the arm of our character, everything else is very blurry and with much lower quality that I was expecting. Textures, scenarios and especially the aliens have much less detail that I would like. It looks like when we make a drawing and we paint it, but then spill a lot of water on it. We can continue to notice what is below, but it has lost some of that fine trace, leaving everything in a big blur. This is all more noticeable because it is all done in intense, bright and electric colors. Tons of contrasts and colors that generally it works, I assume, but that virtually makes it impossible to see some of the missiles fired at us, since they become camouflaged in the color palette. When we are playing at such a high speed, details are a must, not a sidekick. For simplicity, I can divide the sounds into 3 sections. The background music is fantastic. We start in elevator, with elevator music, but then the electronics just starts. It's just so good. This music helps a lot to create the rhythm, the flow, and if there is a defect that I can point out is that each song is connected to each level. I mean, in the first level you always hear the same music, in the second the same music that is different from the first one, and so on and so on. And this makes the first songs a bit repetitive over time, but it's not as noticeable as you might think, because what matters here the most, it is the beat that helps us find our flow. The sounds of the aliens are just terrible. Seriously, terrible. They mostly sound like pigs, and it seems like we have spent the whole game running away from pigs. The ones who do not sound like pigs turns out to be irritating jiggles or screams that look more like a person with cough. I think that's the best way I can describe them. I have nothing positive to say about these effects. Lastly, the shots are acceptable, but low acceptable. They are good enough for you to notice the difference between most attachments that we are adding to our weapon, but they sound mostly like pew 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 pew. The gameplay is fairly simple. It's a dungeon system. In each room you enter, you are presented with hordes of aliens that try to kill you. Intelligence is not their strongest aspect, nor the weakest, because they appear to have none. Your number one secret is do not stand still. Number 2 is to look for the high ground, and if it does not exist, just try to bait everyone so they all stay in the same-ish area, because everyone behaves in the same way, going after you in the most direct path, in a straight line if possible. If you have everyone together, you know where everyone is and you will have a good idea of where they will appear to you. If there is a trap on the way, like a fire trap, they will just go over it. They will not even try to dodge it. There's no one trying to flank you whatsoever. If it's the closest way to get to you, that's where they will be going. And you can use that to your advantage. In addition, they suffer from immense cerebral stops, often charging in the wrong direction or against the wall. And then there are the glitches, and they can multiply a bit, because multiple times there is an alien trapped somewhere, and I even had a case where one of them did spawn inside the wall, and I could only hit him because luckily I had gained an attachment for the gun that made the bullets bounce on the walls. Otherwise, I would have to restart the game. Bosses mean a significant difficulty spike, but the two I've met were quite fair. So, may you assume that the rest of the ride is quite easy? No, because there's tons of opponents at the same time in a tiny room. Some fly, many have shields, others can teleport and can reach you from positions where you cannot see them, creating multiple positions from which they can hit you. And if you get distracted just by a second, from one of those positions a shot will surely hit you. So, you progress in successive dungeons, killing the successive aliens, looking for loot they sometimes drop. And this loot can be divided into parts, I guess. They can drop Hypercoins, the currency of the game that allows you to buy permanent improvements or unlock new characters, each one of them with different playstyles. They can also drop attachments for your weapon to use just on that current playthrough, or they can drop a currency which allows you to buy some improvements just for the current playthrough. Currency you can only spend if you find the dungeon that sells those improvements or keys to open some boxes that give you more attachments. For me, the most important drops by miles are the Hypercoins. At the beginning of the game we are able to see everything we can unlock, and during this week I was a bit scared by the amount of grind this game could require. Until yesterday the currencies dropped at a rate that seemed to take hundreds of hours for the completionists to unlock everything. But yesterday that pace increased considerably. I do not know if that was just a matter of luck, but in 2 rounds I got more coins than in all my remaining playing time. And if it is to keep like this, it seems to me quite a fair pace. And I think there is still some room for an increase. Just a little bit, since the permanent improvements are just not so significant. Everything else is just quite random and interferes greatly with each of the playthroughs. If you get more powerful attachments or a secondary fire, you'll probably get through the game much more easily and you'll get much further than if you only get buffs on skills or upgrades to the primary fire. There is not a properly good balance here. I thought most of the attachments were useless, and the ones who were good were stupidly good. It is truth that you will hardly make the same weapon twice, but the primary fire has a very similar feel to each other, even if we are seeing a rather different graphical representation between them. Only the secondary fire may vary, and each ammunition is usually very different from each other and much more fun to use. In these games there is always replay value, although the loop is always the same. I have not been able to stop playing, and I've only discovered maybe a fourth of what the game has to show to me, at about 10 hours of gameplay, maybe a little less. In a nutshell, this game is not a work of art. The sound effects are awful, the opponents are so dumb it hurts, but the gameplay is good, and the music is excellent. All this together pulls the game to the positive area, but handle this with careful. Just watch some gameplay before you buy it. I simply loved the game, but I found no rational reason to that.